for the jet skis. I only had like life preserver ones for the boat. Yeah. All right. Well, welcome to another episode of the Brooks McDonald podcast. I got Tyler Milkey here with me, and we missed a week. I apologize. By the time this comes out, we will have missed our 2-week release. That was my fault. I had a busy week last week and just couldn't record, but excited to keep this going. As me and Tyler say a lot, these experiences for us actually make us sharper as individuals in conversation. You just either get a benefit, or if you want to call it that, of hearing it put to use. And hopefully you find something that challenges you and encourages you in life. That's my ultimate piece. This was all began because I've been to way too many motivational events and read way too many motivational books. And most of them, they're fantastic, but they're void of Christianity.
Yeah.
And so this is an opportunity as two fellow Christians to discuss it, a lot of motivational pieces, and a lot of times through the lens of Christianity also.
Yeah.
So we can frame what our life is as we know it as Christians through some really great information that we don't have to say, hey, this is separate and apart. This feeds through the same Savior that we serve every day.
Yeah.
So the conversation that we're going to have today is around Atomic Habits, which happens to be the title of another great book, Atomic Habits. It's a bestseller that I've started reading. So if you read Atomic Habits, don't be too critical, because I think we're going to go all over in conversation of multiple books. It's almost like you're in our book club right now, because there's like 3 books that I'm pretty active in or just finished that I probably will feed through a lot of this conversation. But Tyler, you and I sat and we were discussing as we prepped beforehand about just habits in general, and trying to be diligent about what your tasks are, what you're trying to accomplish. And most of us, as the average human, we have a lot of bad habits that we don't know about, that we just fall into as adults, but then we don't form good ones because we make these grandiose plans and we never do them because we want to have this chiseled weightlifting body and do that in 2 months. So that means we have to go to this extreme workout regimen from 0 to 100. And it never happens because there's these extreme changes that we have to make. And we set out these really unachievable goals for ourselves. And the book like Atomic Habits and what we're discussing says, hey, what if we broke this down into a little more bite-sized pieces to make sure that something could be achievable, at least something.
Yeah. Yeah, because we talked about this last week, or the couple weeks back, but you want to shoot for the moon, but you never even get up and get across the stream. When if you would have just been like, hey, maybe I could go across the stream.
Yeah.
And you get there and like, oh, where can I go now? The big goals are awesome to have, but if they're so ridiculously far off and unattainable, and you've got a mess in your life that you don't know how to deal with, you'll never get up and achieve that goal. But if you just take those little well, maybe I could get up a little bit earlier, like 5 minutes earlier.
Yeah.
And what could I do? I could make my bed. Like that could be just a simple thing for some people that they never do. And it sets their whole day off in a different direction.
Yeah. Which that happens to be another book in and of itself.
Yeah.
May always make your bed.
Yeah.
Admiral McCraven wrote it, which I've heard him speak a couple times.
We talked about Peterson kind of making that point too.
Jordan Peterson does. Admiral McCraven, who was led the Navy SEALs for a long time, talked about why in the military they start, because you got some people that come into the military with no training, like really rough. It's kind of like either you're going to go to college or you're going to get your life together. I'm going to send you to the military. Like, I mean, it was like a last resort for some people to get their life together. And it has, I've known personally people with stories of were really on a bad path that went to the military, and that regiment's what they needed to change. And he talks about in the military, that's why they get them to make their beds so cleanly in their rooms and their uniforms, because it is a tangible item that even the most overweight, the most non-healthy individual can all make their beds.
Yeah.
And it gives them a dopamine boost in the morning of, I can win, I can accomplish something. And habits Atomic Habits talks about tend to stack, and you can get yourself into a winning frame of mind to think, maybe I could accomplish something else, which is kind of what you're referencing.
Yeah, because I've done this in my own life, but you look back after you've done these little things and you've done them for a while and you've routinely put those into your life, and you look back a year and you're like, wow, I'm like a different person than I was.
Yeah.
And it might just be little things that you didn't have to make these giant goals and work your rear end off. And it's just these little things that, that couple minutes with my kids.
Yeah.
When I got home, I just said, hey, I want to be a better dad. I want to spend a few minutes with my kids when I get home. That's a couple minutes out of your day.
Yeah.
And you look back, and what was hard of those few minutes dealing with your kids that maybe you're not used to, now you're like looking forward to having a full Saturday with them. And I've done this. You go back a couple years and like, man, I'm a different person than I was a year ago. And it started with that, just, I'm going to spend a few minutes doing XYZ.
Yeah.
And what that can turn into, rather than I want to always make sure I spend an entire day doing this.
Yeah.
You know, that's unrealistic for a lot of people just to start out with.
Right. And being an individual that I do not like my calendar. I'm not telling you that's a good thing. That's actually a habit I got to work on building better. I had a business coach one time say that successful people are a friend of their calendar. And some people would actually, another framing, I think, of that quote probably was a slave to their calendar, but she knew that my tendency hated the calendar so much she was dare not use the word slave with me.
Yeah.
So she changed it to word friend to calendar because it needs to be a positive spin. And I have learned more that I've got to go to my calendar if I want to accomplish things. How am I going to remember everything? It's funny, I wrote this down as one thing I've had to embrace, and it's my personality type. If you follow Enneagrams, which I had a buddy of mine say that Enneagrams to Christians it's the Christian zodiac.
Yeah, it's the zodiac signs for Christians.
So I'm an Enneagram 8, which is pretty hard, bull-nosed on things. And so I noticed even as a child, I wanted to think of myself as like a 007. I wanted to be able to be anything. I felt like an Enneagram or anything else was a pigeonhole. And I hated to think of being pigeonholed into being one thing. And finally, I'm like, wait a second, they're just human tendencies that you have. And especially I love about Enneagrams is it's pretty spot on about some generalized tendencies that I have as a healthy 8 or an unhealthy 8. And where do I tend to go from that? But that led me to where I just never have embraced calendar. What I love a little bit about the habit piece is it's almost like a way to twist me into the calendar piece. Calendar is what you're doing at a certain time. Well, when you wake up, what do you typically do? You brush your teeth. When you at lunchtime, you typically go eat. Well, especially around Atomic Habits, where he calls habit stacking, he's trying to encourage you to say, hey, what if you wanted to do something in the mornings, i.e. take your medicine, work out, habit stack one of those things you want to do next to the routines that you do all the time you already have. So if you're going to brush your teeth, set the supplements container right next to the toothbrush. Mm-hmm. So habit stack that, okay, now when I brush my teeth, I take my supplements. And then you form a habit to where that follows. It's not a time-driven thing. It's just a task-driven item that moves you to.
And it gives you like a leg up, a little bit of a helping hand in things. You know, it's
neural pathways we've talked about before on here. It's a mind thing that's driven into your head. And if you're going to want to do that, you got to frame cues for your brain to recognize and to trigger you to do those things. And it has to typically have a dopamine release or a win. So you say, what do you want to accomplish? I want to form this habit because I'd like to accomplish this thing. Most people will say, they associate the snacking as a better, more comforting thing than being in a healthier physique. So you've got to train yourself to say, man, I'd love to do this. Now, in that same book, he says, don't say, I'm going to be a bodybuilder or I want to become a reader. Your brain has to hear it audibly said. So you say, I am a reader. I am a fitness person. And it literally, your brain needs to hear that. Not, I want to ascribe to, I am that. It's a general, another psychological piece.
I think you give yourself the out.
Yeah.
I think that's where it comes from.
True. That's a good
to me,
point.
like, there's part of me that goes, you're kind of lying to yourself, but I can understand where it comes from to some extent. Like, if you say, I need to do this, or I want to do this, you've given yourself kind of a mental out of, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
You know, whereas if you say I am this, you kind of have to almost live up. Otherwise you've lied to yourself.
The power of belief of that's what you're stepping towards. That's
sorry.
No, you're good.
I was going to say, back to your point about, you know, putting things around you to give yourself kind of that little leg up to create the habits. It sounds silly, but one of the ways that helped me get up earlier in the morning, because I wake up probably about an hour and a half earlier than I did a year before.
Okay.
And it started with just wanting to have a bit more time with God in the morning and spend that time doing that. But weirdly enough for me, what helped me do that is putting a coffee machine in my bathroom, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get out of bed and walk downstairs and make coffee. But if I don't make coffee, I'm never going to get out of bed because I'm just exhausted in the morning. I'm not a morning person.
Yeah.
So I put a coffee machine in my bathroom.
You
I
change
can
the
roll
cue.
out of bed. There's a little espresso shot. It's all right there. I just push the button. I have it, and I can just sit and have some quiet time or do what I need to do. And that has helped me form this habit to just do it now. And I think there's a point to giving yourself grace.
Yep.
When you make those mistakes or you're trying to build this habit. Oh, you miss a day. Don't throw it out the window. Don't beat yourself up so much that you forget about the thing that you're trying to work towards.
Yeah.
Give yourself a little bit of grace. Go, it's okay.
I'm bad about
it's
that.
all right. It happened. Let's just do it better the next day.
Yeah. But be diligent on getting back on the habit.
Yes. Yeah.
Like you said, well, that wasn't me anyways. I think that's where you originally were going with your point is say, well, you can tell yourself that's a cop out. That's not who I am anyways. I don't really want to be, I'm not that person. So let me just go back to what my norm was. It even talks about just in this capitalistic society, how there's whole departments dedicated to called oral sensation, how a food feels in your mouth, and departments for these big companies have just to that. They want the sizzle of the carbonation to be exactly right so the Coke lasts longer, or the saltiness of that chip or the crispiness of it, because the brain gets bored if you eat kale 15 times in a row and you just get full and stop. But enough sensory load makes you overeat, which you buy more of the chips because it keeps tasting so good and you crave the taste whether you're full or not. And it's like, man, come on now.
I want that job.
Huh?
I want that job.
Don't get me started. I might have told you
all day. Like, no, this one doesn't have the perfect mouthfeel.
Hey, I went to a Tyson chicken plant one time that only does McDonald's chicken nuggets and chicken sandwiches. And there's these people that all they do is test chicken nuggets. Now, I'm sure that got so old so fast.
I was going to say,
but in my mind, I'm like,
this is the greatest thing ever.
I could stand in at least for a week.
Yeah.
As long as I got the barbecue sauce or the sweet and sour sauce. By the way, there's 4 shapes to the McDonald's chicken nugget: the bell, boot, bone, and ball. Just so you know. If you open up a chicken nugget, there's
scary
4,
that
there's
that
one of those 4 shapes
head.
because sadly enough, that chicken moving across is rolled over like a cookie cutter, and they have 4 shapes to the cookie cutter that makes your chicken into one: ball, bell, boot, and bone. You're welcome. See, you never know if you come onto this. What may grace your presence? And I was going somewhere with all this.
I'd like a number 4, all boots.
Yeah, but just even how capitalistic society knows how to get you to do things, lazy habits, bad habits that you want to break. They figured out ways to trigger that. And something you said earlier, and we've talked about how probably on here, if a plane is flying from New York to LA, they set a heading, but inevitably there's a crosswind. There is something that's going to drive them off. So they make these little 1-degree corrections to kind of, they never go in a straight line. They kind of meander like this till they get to their destination. But it's these little bitty corrections along the way. And I think you'd maybe mentioned that, those little corrections of the 5 minutes with your child or your spouse, or the 5 minutes in the Word reading, they're little bitty corrections, but strung together over a long period of time. That's how you see these meaningful changes. Mutual friend of ours has a kid that took this to an extreme, that they want to get in shape, but they didn't want to do 5 sets of 25 ab sit-ups. So they started to where for 1 week, they did 1 sit-up a day. 1 sit-up
That's
day.
an easy commitment.
For 7 days. Then they went to 2 sit-ups a day. And they are up to like 20 sit-ups or something, but it's these habits forming that don't even notice the change. There's a movie called Focus with a very, if you've seen it, a very controversial, if you're watching this at April 11th, controversial actor Will Smith is the lead character in it, where there's visual cues that he talks about, and these guys get this gambler to see a number all the time, and the whole day were prepping with visual cues to see 7. They put 7 in the wallpaper on the elevator. There was Asian music playing in the background that had the Mandarin version of 7 being said over and over, and then all of these things where 7's being seen, Q, 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 so that all he'll see when he has to choose a number was 7. And that's great in movie and film or in potato chip sales, but how do we bring that to us to say, okay, how do we use this to our advantage? Because we're lazy. That's really the bad part as Americans. Most people take the path of least resistance, and rightfully so at times. I mean, I think of a single mom that's getting up, getting early, getting their kids ready, trying to get to work, working a job, getting their kids home, getting them fed, getting them in bed. How can you think of anything else? But to make big changes, some of the speakers I've heard speak say you've got to just hate the suck so bad. It's got to suck so bad that has to be your trigger to change. That you don't want to associate with that anymore, because the habit of eating that fast food or whatever, if the good outweighs the affiliated bad that you put with it, you'll never make the change. So you've got to go out of your norm to do that. As an example, I don't think we were talking about it before, but I don't think I said it on camera, was the guy was saying apples that go bad in his bottom fruit container in his fridge that he had every intention of eating, but he bought them, he couldn't see them. He bought a pretty bowl and put them in the middle of his table, or right in the middle of the kitchen where he did. And guess what? He ate more apples. There was a hospital that didn't want to tell people to buy less soft drinks and more water, but they just visually changed in the refrigerators were right next to the checkout, and they were full of soft drinks. So they started putting water in with the soft drinks. They also put water in baskets next to the checkout line. And sodas sales dropped by 11%, and water sales increased by 25% just by that change. By the way, the brain's human nature operates off of our senses: sight, smell, taste, sound. But they believe that the brain dedicates almost 60% of those sensories to just vision. We're so visually driven as a human being. Talks about how snakes can sense temperatures or with their tongue, and how sharks can sense in fish different ways that we don't get to use it, but our sense is the way we use it, and human nature is. So you've got to use that to your advantage. And so spiritually, you've got to use that to your advantage, because I hear so many people, no matter where they are on their Christian journey, brand new or seasoned theologians, will say, man, I'd love to spend more time with the Lord or get to know him better. And that comes through habit formed. And I've said, me and my dad, I remember talking to my dad, like, man, how they were able to spend so much time with God and hear him speak. And my dad even said, well, they sat in the field and watched sheep all day, son. They kind of had time to do, but we can create habits of forming ourselves to do that. Whether it be, you said it. That's why people say prayer closets. Even set a place for where you pray. If you're visually cued by that, have a chair that only is for prayer, to cause you to do that. Put your Bible out on the bed right next to in front of your pillow. That you literally have to move it off your bed at night to read it.
For me, it's weirdly like when I say I get up and I have my coffee, I sit in the shower. Like, I can't have any distractions in the shower, really. Like, I get up before the kids get up, hopefully before Sarah gets up, and I can just sit. There's no TV, there's no anything, and I just sit there and drink my coffee and have some time in the morning, and that works for me really.
You take coffee in the shower? Okay, just curious. I noted just there when you said have my coffee.
Yeah, no, I do. I take my little espresso cup and I sit there and I've got a way I sit, and it's perfect, and just have my coffee and have some time in the morning, can pray and be quiet, and there's no TV or distractions or anything like that. But I found that, and sometimes I have that in my office when I have some time, and there's other. It's not just reserved necessarily just for that, but for me, that's what sets my morning off right. And I started doing that at the beginning of the year when we did our church fast. That was what I wanted to do, was just set that time aside, wake up earlier, and now I crave it. Yeah, like it's one of those things where, it my day doesn't feel right if I don't have that. Right. Not to say there are some mornings that I accidentally get up a little later or whatever. I'm not gonna throw it out, but it's such a nice thing for me to have that time in the morning.
And me and you both love music, and what I've noticed as well, and this may just be like aging me in some ways, but if I listen to music that have words, I'm going to listen to the words of the song, and then my brain will go, where was I when I first heard that? What was I thinking about? So now especially in the shower, even talking about phone, I have a little spot over where it's safe out of the water for my phone, and I'll put on meditation music. There's 1,000 ones. There's one called Stress Relief on Spotify that I've been listening to, and it's just music only, piano, keyboard, or whatever. But I love movies so much. I think that when I listen to that, it's great framing music, like in a cinema, to where my life feels like a movie when I'm listening to it. Not only a movie, but it's more somber. I'm not putting on the Last of the Mohican soundtrack or something, but it's easygoing, soft music, and it puts me in a frame of reference to be more intentional depth of thought because that music is on. And it's even spilled over now because when I get into the car, my car automatically picks up my phone and starts playing the music that was on there. Well, that's what's playing typically. So it's, as soon as I get in the car and start it moving, it's the same thing. It's that same meditation music that starts playing.
But I think
And I just let it play all the time.
Yeah, I think that, but just like you want to set a water out to drink more water, like set yourself up for success with having time for God.
Yeah.
And spending time in it. It might be music. It might be, for me, it's sitting in the shower. But do those things to help set you in the right frame of mind, because it is hard to turn off all the stuff going on all the time in the back of your head.
So I mean, some takeaways from this though too would be, it doesn't have to be an hour-long conversation with the Lord. That's great. He loves every bit of it. But maybe if you just started as a practice of just 5 minutes. Someone compared, and I might have talked about this before, but somebody compared how God's relationship to us is his children. There was a guy that spoke that said he had a son that was in college, and he doesn't get to talk to his son very often. But the son calls him randomly during the week to talk about something, and how excited as a father he was to stop everything he was doing to talk to his son that wanted to call him and talk. That's the same love that the Lord has for us, that he wants to just listen to us, to talk. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He's just excited you're taking time to spend with him. Now, again, I'm not trying to reframe who's God here. He is the Lord, and he's omnipotent, omnipresent. He's the head.
But he wants relationship.
He wants
with
relationship
us.
with us.
He wants to go with us through the day.
You're not good enough. To spend time with him, and he craves that. So maybe 5 minutes is where you spend time discussing time with him. And then maybe it's some 5 minutes about your day or whatever you're trying to accomplish. But I tend to set these obscene goals. I want to read a book, and I try to do that in like a day, and I get so annoyed because I fall asleep because I don't read fast enough. My brain gets tired of my eyes moving at a snail's pace of a first grader reading.
That's why I have to do audiobooks.
Yeah.
I keep reading the same thing over and over. And
10 pages. Okay, 5 minutes of prayer, 10 pages in the Bible, 10 pages of reading the book that you wanted to read, and check those marks off to just like making your bed, you've accomplished something. One of the books, actually, you talk about getting up early. One I've really enjoyed, and I'm rereading it now and highlighting some of the key words, is the 5 a.m. Club. And it's really just spending time trying to sell the idea of getting up at 5 a.m., that's where winners win, is before the rest of the world is up. First of all, it's a time that I guarantee you when you heard 5 a.m., the majority of you said, nope, not me, which is exactly what I would normally. Remember like what you said earlier, it's my cop-out. I've always said, I am not a morning person. That's my cop-out. So you change it, say, I'm a morning person now. So I set my alarm for, this is a great story actually. I didn't tell Carrie Beth, my wife, about setting it for 5 a.m. And my alarm went off at 5 a.m. and she literally was laying there, and she put her hands up like, what are you she knows me not to even set an alarm. So she's like, what are you doing?
You weirdo.
Then finally I communicated clearly, look, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And so this time I set it for 6 a.m. So let's work back there. I'm normally up 6:45, 7, maybe 7:30 sometimes. But that was an easier. So this morning I got up 6, got going. There was another guy that's very successful with his time that says, when you wake up at 6 a.m., I didn't do this, and I'm lucky that I didn't fall back asleep. He said, when you wake up at 6 a.m., you count audibly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And at the end of 5, your feet better be on the floor, because you're going to go back to whatever it is. And that's actually a good change trigger for you for anything you need to do. A hard conversation you need to have. There's another author that talks about that. Audible cues of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which, speaking of audible cues, there's a science also behind saying something. So you may know somebody when you go on a trip that'll say, oh, they'll out loud, I got my keys, got my wallet, got the kids in the car, got the underwear in the suitcase. But there's a proven nature that speaking it out loud, just like we talked about not speaking negatively of yourself, speaking things out loud actually makes success higher. In some Asian country, I'm not sure if it's Japan or China, where the high speed like bullet trains are, they have habits of, they train where visual cues. So the conductor says the light is green. And so the guys that attend the ramp say all clear, and they say it out loud. There's even a story of a child that jumped into the train last minute. Mom reached in to grab him, and the door shut on her arm, and she was stuck there. It's a 200-mile-an-hour train that takes off really fast. It was not going to go well. But because the guy in his cues visually says as he checks off, he stopped it within a second, was able to stop the train, get her out, and the train was able to leave on time, even as fast as they corrected the issue. And so even this literal things like, tomorrow, you're getting in bed and out loud you say, tomorrow I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. and my feet are going to hit the floor within 5 seconds of me waking up. That there's studies that show that you statistically have a better chance of succeeding in actually doing that. There was a study they did on people working out and whether they worked out or not by verbally saying, and even they'll get you, in some of these things. And again, you got to believe it. I've been in some where I'm like, get me out of here. And I want you to write it down on a sheet. And you're like, okay, let me write it down. But there's power in this. And so I think part of this conversation for me and you to each other, but hopefully this is helpful to you, is to be intentional about your day. And I would challenge you that you cannot come up with a good enough argument for me to say that getting up earlier does not help you be more intentional. And that's what I've had to come up with. Starting my morning earlier to give me more time to accomplish whatever I was wanting to do, both spiritual time, refocusing yourself, prayer time, and then also working out, to go ahead and knock some of that out if you can.
It feels like you're starting from a good place instead of starting from like behind the 8 ball, I guess.
Well, statistically too, your brain's reset and refreshed in the morning. So when you wake up, it's a clear slate. When you say you're going to do it at 10 p.m., all the troubles of the world are on you. The kid that was annoying you when they went to sleep, the challenges you got to do, all the lists that you had from your boss or whatever that was that day overwhelm you, and you don't do it statistically. But in the mornings, that's why success happens more. So getting up early, I think, is a good challenge to put yourself on, which in all these, I'm not saying we're necessarily done now, but I'd love to hear if you have habits of where you do some things from a workout or whatever. Mark Cuban's an example. Mark Cuban, if you don't know who that is, he's one of the Shark Tank members, owner of Dallas Mavericks. He started going to sleep with his workout clothes on. So that was one less thing, just like you having the cup of coffee. The workout clothes are already on him when he wakes up. He didn't have an excuse to get up, and that's one less thing. What are some things that you do that change that? I'd love to hear it. I'm so excited to hear people that are probably way further down the self-discipline road than I give us feedback on that.
And don't hit the snooze button.
Yeah.
It's the enemy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're like me, the more you hit it, the worse it is.
Well, I'm so angry about it. I don't even hit snooze. I hit stop, and either I'm getting up or I'm going back to sleep.
That's what helps you. If you could delete the snooze button where you hit stop and your brain knows like, if I don't get up right now, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
Like I just stopped my alarm.
Yeah, and it's something you said earlier too, is like for me is intentional dates with my daughter, which on Saturday mornings, me and her, we go get coffee almost every Saturday. It's already become a habit where I was out of town on a Saturday morning and she was frustrated because she was scared. So on Sunday morning we went because she covets that time where it's just me and her to be able to spend time together. And I put her to bed at night, and my son spending time with him when my daughter's at dance. Intentional family time with each family member is so important.
I think that's the thing to keep in reference. It's not that hard. It's just doing a little thing. You want to be a better person. You want to be a better dad. You want to be a better husband. It's not like it's not a daunting of a task when you simplify it in your head of going, I can carve out 1 or 2 minutes to do this thing. Yeah. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be a big grandiose thing. You tend to push that off, you know, but if it's just I'm going to write my wife a note before I leave and put it somewhere in her nightstand.
Yep.
That's a 10-second ordeal.
Yeah.
And boy, can it just make a massive difference.
And just our tendency to procrastinate, right? At least like with a kid, you have a parent that tells you to brush your teeth and will follow up with you on that. we as adults don't
We
have
don't have,
anybody.
yeah, we don't have the
You know,
person slapping us upside
especially as
the
you
head.
get older, the less and less people that hold you accountable to any of those tasks, and so
Well,
it's
what's
just
that?
easy
What's
to say
that?
no.
There's like a term of 5-minute manager or something.
Mm.
If it can be done in 5 minutes, do it now, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
You
no,
know,
I've-
but if you break that up, it's easier for your brain to just go ahead and get it done.
yeah. But there's just stories of just people accomplishing great things by those little bitty corrections, and that's what even you're referencing. I didn't even spend time on it, but world-class biking events have been won by little habit corrections.
Yeah.
Huge changes in life and health have been changed by little habit corrections, and we just need to be about not having that excuse. So yeah, thank you for your time as always. Thank you for spending it here, however long that is. I hope it's rewarding to you. We really appreciate hearing from you. We appreciate your sharing it with others. If you found something of value to share with somebody else, just like when I read books, I hope there's one little thing that you took away that maybe sets you on the right path, whether it be closer with the Lord, and or in addition to that, just reframing a better life to take control. Don't let life happen to you. You control that. The life begins at the end of your comfort zone. You need to be about that. So thank you for spending some time with us as always. We appreciate it. Tyler, thanks for what you do to make this possible. Make it a good one.